U-Haul with a Jeep for 2,000 miles.
You didn't drive the Jeep?
No.
Each were driving.
She's gonna 30 more days with YouTube and then we're ready to roll.
A lot easier to get 9 states on the East Coast.
What's that?
A lot easier to get 9 states on the East Coast.
We went right through the middle of.
You get it over with.
You know what?
Connecticut, New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Illinois,
And I just got your PS.
Iowa, and Nebraska and Colorado.
You just need to do Vermont.
Call this meeting to order at 7:12. And, let's see. Aaron, would you like to do the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this point in time, I have to assume that we have no public comments or requests.
That's correct.
Okay. Association reports, Lynn.
Well, I genuinely I figured I had somebody, but I did want to say that I talked to a bunch of people who really are excited about the new board. I mean, and that is 100% genuine. I hear a lot of people say, wow, I think, we're gonna be heading in the right direction. We got a good group. And so that's super positive. And even with all the restrictions, all the chaos going on, there's a lot of teachers who are excited to start the school year. They're like, let's do it, let's get back with kids, let's do this full time. And yeah, there's gonna be all kinds of things to work around, but let's do it. And so there's actually a lot of energy out there. So
That's
I
good.
I think it's good.
Yep. All right, thank you. Anybody got any questions? Okay. I don't see a OSCA representative. So we'll go on to the superintendent's report.
Okay, well, I got a couple of things that I'll share. I don't want to chat, I want to share my screen. A couple of different things that I'll share with you. The first one starts out really as in my report. Sorry, Julian, that we had a meeting today, an Oregon statewide superintendent's meeting, and that was, I didn't have a lot of time to process all the information because it finished at 4. And so Oregon's priority, I say, is to implement. I keep hearing myself.
I know, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
I'm trying to get it turned on. Okay, now go.
So to implement protocols needed to reliably and safely hold in-person school every school day for all students all year long. And so that's really the state's target, is to be able to set up things that are open and welcoming for all students. And so I put in my report information about our first days, which have us coming back with students on Tuesday, September 7th. Kindergarten only for the morning at Blodgett Elementary School. Clemens will have an assessment day, so they start doing some looking at where students are at to start. And they're doing that this year with kindergarten and first grade students. Philomath Elementary will start with 2nd grade, Philomath Middle School will start with 6th grade, the high school will start with 9th grade, and Philomath Academy will start with all new students. On the Wednesday, with the exception of Clemens that are still involved in their assessment day, everyone will be back in school. And so that is our plan at this point in time. I've been getting some emails from some folks to be able to say, what are we doing to really get us started? And we talked about everyone will be face covered, and we're monitoring distance, and we're just keeping track of what it is we need to do in order to be as safe as we can. And we're watching with the health department for them to be able to say, yes, go, or no, don't go. But right now, we're a go. So our current options, and I will put out, my plan is to put out the start of school information in an email to families tomorrow. The current options are really in-person learning at Blodgett, at Clemens, at Philomath Elementary, at Philomath Middle, and at Philomath High School. And our online learning is being put at the Philomath Academy. Dependent upon where numbers go and where students shift, we may also shift based on numbers, some staffing to be able to move to the academy. If there are a number of online students that choose that to start the year or to be in all year. And so we have flexibility in the staffing, but are wanting to be able to kind of see where numbers go in terms of where we are there. So a number of people are looking for the same experience we had last year, where we had at the elementary level 3 teachers teaching in a classroom and 1 doing a distance learning option. And we're hoping that that will be the same kind of a model through the Philomath Academy, but we have to look at our numbers to be able to make sure that gels. And so we're going to continually look at where our numbers move and where our students are to be able to make good decisions. So flexibility and responsiveness really, I've decided, are going to have to be our first and middle, and I'm not sure what the last name is, but it's really going to be responsive to where families are and what the needs are. So if we hit next week and there are a number of our families that are choosing to move to the Philomath Academy, we're going to have to react. If the health department, heaven forbid, said close them down, we're going to have to take a look at how we shift. So it's just being very attentive and trying to be as flexible as possible. We also recognize that it's going to take some teacher time if we have to turn on a dime also. So if we all of a sudden have to go to a distance learning model, we're going to have to take a little bit of time to make sure that people are ready to be able to do that and students have the supplies they need to do it. So
a quick question on that.
yeah.
All right, so we talked about being ready. One of the things that caught us off guard a little bit last year was the Chromebooks to send home. Are we, I'm hoping, in a better position than
Yes.
the Chromebooks?
Yes, we
Was
are.
there talk to initially hand out Chromebooks on a one-to-one type basis, or are we just making that decision and assuming that one day we won't just wake up and say, don't come?
Right, and I know that there's plan not at the very first day, but in the early part of the year to be able to do that with 8th grade, with the intent that we will try to have those students have those Chromebooks to carry forward into future years of school. And so rather than doing it with every grade level, we thought we'd start with somewhere and be able to move it forward. I would say that the high school is probably in a place where they're going to look to get as many kids outfitted as possible. The place, not so much, is going to be elementary, but there is a readiness with, we have the machines that we need. And so if there's that thought that we're going to move that direction, or for our students who have gone in the direction of the academy, that will all be available. But we have them on site and ready. We actually have a different series of checkout protocol this year so that we can keep better track and tabs of the Chromebooks. It's amazing the number that didn't come back with charging cable. We got the Chromebook back, but we didn't get the charging cable. But being able to really do better track of that. So we're in a much better place this year to be able to do that. As far as access at the school, they're based on the decisions the board made last year, we were able to conclude making sure all the closets and things were updated at all schools to be able to have in-school connects and spaces. And so where we last year had internet issues at times where if you got all your teachers on, it couldn't support it. We're in much better shape this year to be able to have that not be an issue. So technologically, we feel really good. You're welcome. Face covering requirements, and that's something that we talked about at our meeting today. I do want to share another document that will continue to grow, and it's really a face covering diagram. Just to give you the update, the school language came out and said, students need to wear face coverings inside, not outside, and gave us some of the requirements in that way under the Ready School Safe Learners framework. And the state COVID mandates came out and said, everybody's going to wear a mask in all indoor public settings, regardless of their vaccination status. We also have heard that K-12 school employees and volunteers will be required to get vaccinated by October 18th. And the date is October 18th because the Pfizer vaccine has been approved. And then effective tomorrow, face coverings will be required in most outdoor settings regardless of vaccination status, and that is in large groups. So if I'm just walking on the sidewalk and pass somebody, I don't have to be masked for that. And then the Benton County had their mandate that said pretty much the same thing, that they were asking people in Benton County to mask up outdoors. And so the states just kind of matched that requirement or that request. So what we did was we put together, and this will go out to families also, what is the condition, what is the face covering requirement, and what are notes? So for instance, daily in the classroom, indoors, yes, face coverings are required. If there are staff alone in a classroom, it is optional because they're by themselves. You'll see too down in that when we get to offices and the district office that staff alone in an office, a face covering is optional at that point in time. So daily passing time in the hallway is a yes. Break time is a yes. Outdoor classes still follow the school guidance. And so the face covering is optional for students outside. In a weight room, we were trying to get as specific as possible to the environments we knew that yes, face coverings are required. At recess for our elementary schools, when it's outside, it's optional. Same would be true of your break time outside at the elementary school. And so they're really pushing on outside for our students as being, we want to watch their distance, but it's acceptable for them to be able to be unmasked. We could require otherwise, and we'll watch with the health department what that means and looks like. But right now, we feel like we're in a pretty good place to control that. If somebody is actively eating or drinking, they don't need to wear a face covering. But that doesn't mean that you keep your face covering off all through lunch. Because once you're finished eating, the face covering goes back on. And so we did some for athletics and activities. So players, when they're involved in games and drills, their face coverings are optional. If they're on the bench watching films or in a meeting, they need to be face covered. Coaches have face coverings, volunteers, spectators, and then outdoor practices and games are optional at this point for our athletes. Staff gatherings for our staff meetings, for our professional learning Fridays, for our committees, again, district office facilities and technology. And we even went so far as to say, what are some community gatherings that we know are coming up? And that's our school board meetings. Yes, we have to be face covered. What about back to school open house? What about people who rent our facilities? What about the preschool at CPS? What about STARS and sports for PYAC? And what about the school bus? And so we want to continue to add to that to be able to make sure that we've got a constantly updated list of when things are required and when they're not. And then the rest of the form just plugs in what are the masking requirements in schools. So we felt like that would be helpful as things change to be able to continue to get information out.
You got a question, Susan?
Yeah.
If, like, I like to go to football games, but I don't like to hang out with other people. I'm usually by myself. So do I still have to wear a mask even though I'm social distancing?
The statement was if you could maintain a 6-foot social distance, then that would not be a requirement.
Okay.
Yes, the large group, I think was the specification, and so where distancing is not possible, but yes.
Well, I seen it wasn't optional up there, it was yes, so that's why I asked the question.
And that was where this was the information we got today had a little bit more clarity that we couldn't put all the way in. So there's some updates with that, but it's really about being able to distance.
Okay.
So I showed you the face covering requirements. We know, we've heard from some people that students will either or families will drop off their children who will refuse to wear a face covering. And at that point, what we are doing is we will isolate and contact parents and other people on the contact list to be able to come and pick up the student from school. And then we will work with them on how we can provide schooling to their student, which is really through the academy if they continue to decline to wear a face covering. And we feel pretty good about that. My plea to families is going to be, if you want to drop off your student with a refusal to wear, let's talk first about what our options are so that we're not setting up a display for some other kids to see in front of our schools. But we know that that's a possibility and we will deal with that accordingly. We talked the last time we had the parent input forum about Section 504 requests. There will be additional information out about that. The Section 504 request is really based on a disability and a disability that impacts major life function. And so it really can't be a automatic, I'm going to make a request and I don't have to wear a face covering. It could be that, first of all, the team has to make the determination about disability status and does it impact learning? Because if it's not going to have if we're not seeing the negative impact, the 504 doesn't apply. But then we also work together as a team, and it could be that we would offer possibly a face shield as opposed to a face mask. It might be mask breaks. It might be a number of things like that are a team's determination. And we've had a couple of phone calls on being able to establish that first meeting with some people to be able to gather data to be able to get the team working on it. So the COVID vaccinations, we've got more information about that today, and I will put that out as I get a chance to coalesce the information that we got this afternoon. We do have 2 more vaccine clinics with Benton County Health that they want to set up here. One is September 27th, one is October 18th. And I will have more information at that point about some of the specifics for our staff vaccines that will also go to staff members as well. There are some exceptions. One is a medical exception and the other is a religious exception. And the questions are still coming about what does that mean for contractors in the school? So what does it mean for Cintas, our custodial supply provider? What does it mean for somebody that's coming in to work on a boiler? Things like that we're getting to the bottom of to be able to be that specific with what we need. My last one on there, which I didn't get a chance to type, has some in-service week updates that our leadership team has talked about that we're going to put out tomorrow, some information. Based on COVID numbers and information, and based on hearing some information from staff, we would love to get 200 staff people together on the first day of school and be able to have them be together for the first time in a year and a half. However, where we are right now, we just don't feel like that's prudent to do. And so what we're doing is we're going to move, and because the board has been invited, we're moving our in-service first morning back to the schools. And so we will be breakfast in individual schools. And so if you are available, it may be that you choose to go to the school that you represent and join in for breakfast if you'd like to. And then we will either live stream or video some of the general professional learning into the schools before they have time in their own school. The same thing will happen with our professional learning on Thursday morning that we have set up. We had talked about putting it outside. Well, I think it was Lily and you pointed it out that it probably wouldn't be good on Wednesday to pull people together and put that in-service activity outside with hot quiche and 47-degree weather. So that was one of the reasons that we said, let's just shift it. And the same thing with like I said, the Thursday, and Dan Johnson has been working with us on putting that all together. Will be more videos for individual schools to watch. There will be some hands-on opportunities in computer labs, but we really felt like in order to honor our teachers and classified employees, and knowing that they're saying, I'm ready to come back with kids, let's not blow it up and say, we know you want to come back and be with students, and so therefore we're going to say, if you can't come be with 200 people for an hour and a half or 3 hours in the same space, but boy, we love you, that it's just not worth it to try and do that. And it's not worth the possibility of infection risk that would be worth away. So that specific will be coming out, but have really tried to be thoughtful with what we've been hearing and what makes the most sense to be able to have us start officially and in a good way.
So, Susan, what day is that in-service breakfast at each school?
It will be Wednesday, September 1st at beginning at 8 o'clock.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so I guess we'll move on to the Director of Finance report.
Good evening, can everybody hear me? All right, this is a great way to kind of test out how we do both in-person and remote portions of the board meeting at the same time. So happy to be the guinea pig to try and figure out how this works. So feedback would be great. Kind of want to share a few things with you, give a little update as to some things that are happening, and then some information on the finance report as well. So we're currently, as you're probably aware, we're currently still in negotiations with our certified group. Unfortunately, we have not finalized that yet. That's still going on, but we hope to have that finalized here in the next few weeks. That's our goal. So just letting you know that that's still out there. We're also going to be posting here in the next week or so 2 vacancy positions on our budget committee. Somebody named Rick decided to leave the budget committee and go over to the board, so there's a vacancy there. And then one of our other budget committee members unfortunately moved out of town. So there are 2 openings that we'll be posting for members of the community to submit applications, and the board will review those by their October meeting. Also, what we're going to be putting out there is the applications for 1 to 2 members of the community to join our long-range facilities planning committee that we're going to start. To something we wanted to try to do last year, but COVID kind of got in the way and we weren't able to get it off the ground. But following up on the long-range facilities plan that was done for us back in the 2019-20 school year, we want to be able to look at what the status of our facilities are and our capacity and our buildings. And it's a broader thing that's going to take a long time to really kind of go through and investigate where we're at. So we're forming a committee made up of administrative employees, teachers, classified members, board members, and also community members, and probably a student or 2 to just kind of give feedback and have everybody discuss some of the things that are going on around our community. So you'll see some applications for that here shortly as well. Now, as far as the financials go, normally in the summer months, it's pretty quiet in terms of reporting the numbers. So what you have in the report is kind of an estimate of where we think we're going to be for the last fiscal year. And right now our ending fund balance is projected to be roughly about $2.4 million. And I'll point out that that's lower than what it has been in the past. And your first question might be, that seems kind of strange. Didn't we save a lot of money by not incurring some costs like substitute costs and things like that? Well, yes, we did. But unfortunately, on the other side, we did not take in as much revenue as we thought we would for a number of reasons. Number one, the past few years, we had been receiving a large timber payment, roughly to the tune to $250,000 to $300,000. This year, I kept waiting and waiting and waiting because sometimes we got it in June, sometimes we got it early July. We did not receive that payment this year. So that was a huge hit to our revenue projection that we thought we might have. Some of the other things were property taxes. I'm sure you can understand that some people were delayed in their property tax payment, and we didn't receive as much as we thought we were going to. Now that might come in later on when we collect back property taxes for a number of years after the current year. So that was another reason why our revenues were a little bit shorter. A third reason was we had budgeted for interest payments on some of our long-term investments, and the interest rates took a nosedive during the last fiscal year. And so the amount of money we collected on interest was substantially lower as well. And one other thing was when we set up prior to the beginning of last fiscal year, what we thought the Philomath Academy would look like, there were some projections of students joining us outside of Philomath that would bring their ADM with them. And that really didn't happen, but we still had costs. A lot of kids went over to the academy and there were some additional costs that were unexpected. So all those reasons combined, I still think we ended up in good shape, but the ending fund balance is slightly lower than what we had originally projected. Another thing I'll give you an update about is you may have heard, I think it was yesterday, the days are all running together. There was another revenue forecast that was issued by the state. And the good news was that things are going really well financially in terms of tax collections at the state level. As it relates to K-12 education, the estimate was there's about $800 some odd million in corporate tax kicker, which is supposed to be allocated to K-12 education. The report that we got, though, from Salem pretty much said it's going to require the legislature to increase the funding for K-12 education, and they don't think that they're going to do that this school year. I'm not sure why that is, and that money will probably just go into the reserves. Well, I think I kind of hid myself there. Hold on. It'll go into the reserves and be available for the next biennium state school fund. Now, hopefully, there's enough conversations with the folks in Salem that we can get them to change their opinion on that. Because if you remember, school districts were asking for a state school fund of $9.6 billion. The legislature settled on $9.3 billion. They're thinking that because there was money in the student investment account and some of the government surplus or the COVID funds, that we have enough funds. The reality is the student investment account is meant to serve a certain purpose, and the COVID relief funds are really there to help get us through the COVID time. And so they're not really, they're one-time funds. Once they're spent, they're gone. So you don't really want to use that money for things that are not sustainable. So we have those issues. And when it comes to our state school fund revenue for the year, I just want the board to remember, and we have some new board members, so I'm going to take a step back and explain. Last year, for those board members who are returning, we had to project what our enrollment would be for the 21-22 school year. And we had lost about 100 students to homeschooling, charter schools, wherever it may be. And we had no idea how many of them would return this year. So when we had to do our estimate way back in December of 2020, The safest thing was to estimate that half of those students would come back. So we estimated that 50 of the 100 students would return for the 21-22 school year. Last year, the administrative team, or last week, the administrative team met and we started talking about what our enrollment was looking like based on registration. And I will tell you that based on the numbers they provided then, obviously they will change as we get closer to the start of school. The numbers for enrollment are basically pretty close to that 50 students coming back. We're looking more like what our COVID numbers were last year rather than the pre-COVID numbers. And what that means for us is that the funding that we're receiving for the 21-22 school year for state school fund is approximately the same amount that we received last year because our enrollment was higher last year, or the number that we're paying us on was higher last year. So even though the statewide state school fund increased, our share of that basically remained the same. Now, obviously, when your revenues remain the same, but your costs are increasing, that causes a little bit of an issue. So, we've been very concerned about what money we're spending, how we're spending it, trying to keep our reserves in place. So, we're able to provide the services that we can provide and be good stewards with the money that we have. So I wanted to just kind of give you that little snapshot so you understood where you're at. You will see a resolution for your approval later on down the meeting. What that is the student success account actually had increased funding over the original projections. And so this resolution is appropriating those funds so we can go ahead and spend those dollars on some of the additional programs and services that we wanted to add that were in our proposal. So with that, I appreciate you bearing with me through all that, and open up to any questions.
Do they have any questions? Well, you luck out, Bill, there's no questions.
Either you're all sleeping or, everything made sense.
Thanks, Bill.
My pleasure.
Moving on to the strategy and discussion, Ready School, Safe Learners Update.
And some of it I've already shared in my superintendent report. Much like last year where there was a Ready School Safe Learners guidance document, there this year is a Ready Schools Safe Learners Resiliency Framework is the new name for it. But it's the same piece of information that will get updated consistently that gives us information about how we operate in the times of COVID. Initially, the intent of that document was to be able to provide a lot of, well, primarily all local decision-making authority within some constructs to be able to make decisions. And some people are very happy about that and others not so much, because if school A makes a decision to do one thing and schools B and C choose not to within that same regional service area, then is everybody going to jump ship and go to A? And so there's a lot of conversation about how that plays out, but it will be the same that we saw last year in terms of consistent updates about what the guidance for us is. So one of the things that I sent you part of, because I just wasn't done with the rest of it, was a safe return to school and continuity of services plan. And last year we had to do blueprints that needed to be approved, and we had to do blueprints by each school. This year we have to do this safe return to in-person instruction and continuity of services that is for the district. So what we're doing is we had a group get together earlier this week, and it was our old blueprint group from last year, which was great, and put this together. And this will be posted on our website, and it will be approved, if you will, as being submitted. The other piece that we're going to put on our website as they come in are the updated safety protocols from each school. And so it may talk about in the interest of Philomath Elementary, for example, they're going to maintain 2 student entrances. So 2nd and 3rd grade will enter through one door, and 4th and 5th will enter through another. The middle school is keeping 3 entrances, one for 6th grade, one for 7th grade, one for 8th grade. And really, in those instances, we've talked about it, it's not so much for COVID, although that helps, but it's also really about somebody personally to greet students at the door and be able to say, hey, we're glad you're here with us, that you can't get necessarily if you've got everybody thundering through one entrance. And so the opportunity to really be able to touch base with kids in a personal level and let them know you care, also check on what's happening COVID-wise. We also found that it takes care of a lot of milling in the hallways. So there are some advantages in those ways that really make a difference. But the intent would be to add each of the school plans to what's posted on the webpage, so it paints the picture of all schools. So through this, and what I sent, what was in our packet, had the general information about what we needed to do and the whys. And then it asks specifically things like, move that. The first part of it was planning for mental health supports. And so it was the information about how will you devote time for students and staff to connect and build relationships. And so each section we talked about what has been our level of implementation. We're talking about an in-service focus this year of a whole learner education. And we say whole learner because we mean whole student, but we've got older students and younger students. And we want our adults to also be able to look out for each other in these ways as well. It's about building the relationships and looking out for more than solely academic development. So that's what's important. The multiple entries at each school, a slow start, so we're bringing kids in slowly. Our elementary homerooms, our secondary advisor classes. Abby at Clemens is talking about a photo booth on the first days of schools for parents who have to drop their students off. They can't necessarily come into the school to drop them off. It's a way of still being able to get at least some of that first day of school feeling and opportunity. And then the other question it asks is, how do the district's policies, protocols, and procedures center on equity? And so things like, we said, designing learning environments to support the whole of every learner, strategically pairing students and staff for culturally responsive support. So it's, what are those things that we're really going to be listening for that address the all and the access for all? So that's what that second column is. Then it moves on. I'm not going to go through the whole. Ample class time for creative opportunities and staff to explore and process experiences, linking staff and students and families with culturally relevant health and mental health services. So we mentioned some community connections here. We also have a there's another place in here. We've got student activities, but we also reference access to our employee assistance program that's available for staff members. So it's really addressing all of those. Then the next part of it addresses our communicable disease management plan, which we put together last year, and that's posted on our webpage. And also there's a space about coordination with local public health authorities, including tribal health departments, and so have reached out with this information to the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz, just to let them know what we're doing and to keep them connected. Brenda Bremer is somebody that I know Mike Broussard has worked with at the high school on some issues, and Robert Kenta is someone I had met years ago through an ESD project. And so we want to continually be updating and mindful, and so in that I also referenced the number of years ago when Melissa was here, and we actually had to redo some professional learning from Siletz with our staff, and keeping those kinds of things alive because those were good. So I felt like it was a nice connect. Isolation planning, we have in our communicable disease management plan, but also put a little piece of definition in here. And then the rest of it is what are our health and safety strategies? So what are you doing about COVID vaccines for educators, other staff, and students? So we've talked about when we've had clinics available, and just what we're doing. The other piece of that is universal and correct wearing of face coverings. It was interesting, we talked the other day, and I referenced back to my classroom teaching days when we had a group of 7th graders that we were concerned about what we would call skills of independence. When do you stand up in the classroom? When do you sharpen your pencil? How do you get the teacher's attention and all those kinds of things? And that year we chose to actively in the first month of school teach those skills. When people would say 7th graders just need to know how to do those things, we don't need to teach them. But we spent time really focusing on the teaching of those skills and reinforcing and rewarding. And it was one of the best years management-wise that we ever had. And so what that really led us back to is being able to say nobody is too old to be able to listen to information about how to wear a face covering appropriately. And it's really also about being able to encourage and appreciate when students are doing the right thing. So the physical distancing and cohorting and how we're going to try and keep people at least the 3 feet physical distance when we can, and supporting the 6 feet as we can outside, and being more thoughtful about that as we need to, and being able to lighten up as we can. The ventilation and airflow that we have to pay attention to in classrooms. Hand washing and respiratory etiquette, the same thing. When you sneeze, sneeze into a tissue or your elbow, and being able to teach those kinds of processes, but being able to support students as well. We found out last year that we have some students that can't use the hand sanitizer. They just can't. And so helping them with hand washing.
Skin reaction?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it's those kinds of things that we really want to be thoughtful about and being able to do what we need to say, yes, we've got other alternatives to be able to make sure that we can meet these needs. What will we do about on-site diagnostic testing? And we do have a rapid test here available. We also partner with Willamette Valley Toxicology, who will set up some testing opportunities for students with appropriate permissions, so it's active consent. There's a lot of, in this instance, we have to put out the letter and parents have to actually return it signed if they want their child enrolled. So it can't be, we're going to assume you want to unless you tell us otherwise. It's the other way around. And so we'll be doing some of that, and they've actually gotten to a place where the testing appears that it will be sending like a month's worth of tests home, and we would be a drop site for those tests on particular days for particular groups of folks who wanted to be involved. And so it opens things up a little bit for us and really helps out in that way. Screening, testing, our communication with our public health authority, which is Benton County Public Health, has been just so awesome with us and works very well. Again, isolation and exclusion. So if we have to have students go home, some of you may have heard we had some COVID cases identified at Clemens Primary School earlier this week. And in our conversations with our nurses and with the health department, the health department asked us about were all students face covered and 6 feet of physical distancing outside. Can you guarantee us that? No. And so then we started looking at, we really want to start the school year on time with everybody. And so if we cut our losses for a couple of days here and really take care of, for quarantining appropriately so that we are ready to start a school year instead of looking at potentially more concerns. We felt like that was the right thing to do. And so that was communicated well by Clemens with families. People were frustrated, which we knew they would be, but there was a great deal of understanding in why we did what we did. So, and then accommodations for students with disabilities. That's just basically saying we're not going to, we're going to follow through on what we need to do for students with disabilities, and we're not going to back away. The plan itself has to be updated. We'd like to look at it. It says every 6 months. We'd like to look at it quarterly to see what we need to do. But this will be what goes forward to the health department and what our plan looks like rather than being specific to every school. But like I said, we will have specific school information posted on our webpage so that people can see that. So this is something that will be up for approval with our action items to be able to approve this plan to allow us to continue to move forward, knowing that it's going to be reviewed as plans change. I already talked a little bit about 504 when I did my superintendent's report. The athletics with OSAA is really most about this year. The decision was made that any athlete actively involved in drills, practice, or contests would not need to, or a face covering would be optional. I mean, they don't need to, but they can. And a lot of that was with last year. It was swimming and wrestling. And we had at that time a number of basketball players that said, wait a minute, you know, we've got just as much of a chance of somebody grabbing a face covering, and what do we need to look at there? So that makes it a little bit easier for our athletes when they're on the bench, when they are in meetings with their teams, when they're doing any film review, they are face covered, and coaches need to wear face covering. The jury is still out right now on what people are saying about officials. Some say yes, some say no, so we're kind of waiting for that final word on what does it mean for officials in different contexts. So, like I said, this is ever changing and it's going to be constant, but this gives us a start into what we're looking at for the school.
You brought up the Clemens thing this week. That made me worry about the start of our regular school. I know that we were back just 2 days with, and I understand now that we proactively stopped. We could have maybe potentially continued on, but we want to make sure that we can actually start school. But this doesn't feel like it bodes well for our back to school.
Yeah, well, the thing that we've got to remember with that is the students that were involved in lit camp. This was their 4th week. So we had kids in that one experience for 3 weeks already. So, and it's some of those same kids that were also a part of safety camp. And so, you know, kind of all fell together at that point in time. But, you know, we're watching it like hawks. We, you know, we've had traditionally a district nurse and a school nurse, a district nurse full-time and a school nurse half-time. And we're going to put the school nurse full-time. And that really is to keep up with all the COVID protocols, but also if we want to keep kids in school, we've got students that are going to need specific care. But last year when we were out and kids were at home, didn't need to happen. And so the nursing part of it and really being able to be on top of that means a lot. And so, like I said, we continue to have conversations with the health department, with our other local districts, to be able to really follow, because this was one of those that said, okay, are we going to open the doors and end up 2 days later having to close it down? And that's not what we want to do. So it's really listening every day. To what does that mean and what could that look like and what do we need to do?
pretty scary out there.
It is, it
I
really
mean, it
is.
is just, that, you know, you look across the country at the schools that have started and you just see the reports of cases climbing and shutting down schools, and I didn't want kids back. Yeah, so. Fingers crossed.
Yep.
So I have another question though. It feels like like we were talking about spectators and sporting events, for example. And it feels like that puts a lot of responsibility on someone to monitor the people, spectators are following the rules properly. If we're going, we were asking our students to do it during the day, they did not follow the rules. I'm just curious how we're going to, you know, make sure that that's happening.
And we know we're gonna have to ramp up supervision. And especially at football games that start at 7 o'clock at night in the dark. That's gonna be a difficult one to do. So then the other part of the conversation, at least when it was Benton County, do we say you sit with your family and then do we actually, you know, box out in 6-foot segments for people to be able to sit? And so there's a lot of conversation within that, but we do know that it's going to take a lot. That's one of the things that we talked about for the high school is being able to say, high school and middle school, but if we can reinforce from the beginning through teaching, through announcements, through things like that, how important it is for our students to be able to do the right thing. I think we need to do the same thing with our contests, is being able to announce to families and be visible with families and model what we need and talk about its importance. But yeah, it's gonna be tough.
It's gonna be tough. And I want those kids to have those sporting extracurricular activities, but those will get shut down quickly.
Yep.
I mean, those will be like the first to go if things start going south. They were, and we know kids love those things. I love those things.
Yep.
So. Hopefully, that's everyone abides by the rules. Keep staying open and being successful with our extracurriculars.
Yeah, we talked a little bit last spring about it doesn't take much over a PA system at a football game or at a volleyball game or basketball game to be able to say, these are our students playing and having the opportunities they need. Please, for our students, help us out and be supportive of what we need to do. And we know that's not going to answer everyone, but you know, we're committed to doing our darndest.
I know last year we were able to stream a lot of the athletic events. Are we planning, or do we still have that ability or technology that may offer
And
some
that,
folks also an alternative method of seeing an activity that they, for whatever reason, could or couldn't attend, or depending on the cases and what that county decides, the state or OSAA. So I know we kind of scrambled last year. I'm hopeful that we're less scrambling.
this year, the camera is on the football field. And once, my understanding is that the lines have to be striped on the field before they can calibrate the camera. And so for the first time, once those lines get painted, then they'll be able to calibrate it and it'll be ready to go. And there's also a camera in the gym. And so those things are more ready than they have been in the past to be able to stream those games. Oh, okay. Summer school, you know, you heard about Clemens, but summer learning has been highly successful. We've had, trying to get my screen to stop sharing here. We have had numbers of students being involved and, you know, kids showing up to a literature camp every day for 4 weeks at Clemens at the middle school, or excuse me, at the elementary school, and getting to engage with teachers and do some absolutely incredible activities. Some of the camps, Ryan Kilday at the middle school did a camp that was about reptiles And he emailed me last Friday and said that the critters are gonna be here today if you wanna come over. And of course, I never got a chance to go over, but a lot of people have given some pretty cool stuff to students to be able to do over the course of the summer. We were able to connect with PYAC and with Maxtivity to be able to help provide some finance to them from the governor's summer money to be able to support our students without having to establish our own childcare. I don't know what the status of the funding is into the future specific to summer school. And I don't have the actual numbers of people who participated, but that will be something that will come back with in September of what were the numbers that we actually had, that numbers of students who were connected with us. So.
Board retreat highlights. Anybody have any questions or comments on board retreat highlights?
No.
When we're there.
Yeah, just for the community, you know, it's one of the times that we meet, get together, obviously talk about the documents that are shared in our packet. So if community members are wondering what that means, you know, and that retreat was right here in this room. So it wasn't
It's not like we got to go anywhere.
yeah. There's just an opportunity to get together and talk about goals. So, yep.
Is that summary online? For anybody else to look at it?
It's in the board packet.
Well, I know for us, but I mean, if the community member want to look it up.
Yeah, it's,
Yep, okay.
it's out there posted.
Sure, that
And-
packet is available online.
Yeah.
Equity goal discussion.
Danae was going to join us tonight, but she's volleyballing.
Postpone that or?
We can postpone it. What she's really after, it might be easier to email information, or it was really designed to be able to say, if we're looking in the direction of an equity goal for the board, what are, and we can have it right now, what are some of the specific interests or hopes with that kind of a goal, so that as we start working and coming back with some draft of information, that we make sure we're hitting the mark.
Well, I think for me, with regards to that, it's about a lot of the things that we see in our testing and what we know about students who are not meeting what their peers are able to meet due to a variety of circumstances, whether that's challenges with income, or, you know, ability at home, or, you know, they're behind in different areas or reasons. So for me, it's about, as a board member, if we are working to ensure all of our students have a quality education in our district, and we're noticing that there are students who we're not reaching for whatever reason, that, you know, if we think about equity, it's that all students have the same opportunity for success. And if we're not meeting that through whatever metric that is, whether it's a study or a statewide assessment, then I would like to see us have a goal to improve. And so that's kind of where I guess
Perfect.
one aspect.
Okay. Any other thoughts, comments?
Very important, you know, for the district to be focusing on that, so anything we can do.
I think as a board, we should look at it from the aspect of staff as well, and making sure that that, you know, we're treating that as equitably as well, and focusing on diversity type issues. I would propose that we as a board have a work session with the equity team to talk about goals, and because I feel like they could actually help give us some direction. What we don't know, we could take what we learned from them in that brief, and then come back together as a group and decide on some
Very
Suggesting the full board or a representative?
I'm suggesting a work session with the full board,
Okay.
because I mean, I do meet with the equity team, but I think everybody should probably be in on that. Because it's a big goal, it's a big thing for our district to start making some formal language about equity, and it can be hard conversations, and I think we should all talk about that, because everyone has a good opinion on what equity really does look like and what role it should play.
I think it'd be good to have the whole
It's gonna be busy in the next few weeks, of course. I don't want to put this off forever, but obviously focus is getting things back to school. So I'll let Susan kind of maybe talk about some dates. Okay, if that's okay with you, Susan.
Yeah, I'm
Let
happy
them
to
get
put
back
some
to
things
school and all
out there.
that.
Yeah, because the other thing, the team would love to be able to do it. In fact, at our in-service, one of the morning rotation activities is equity, diversity, and inclusion. And again, because Danae has to be in Crook County for volleyball, one of our elementary teachers, Anna Franklin, was going to lead that. And she's one of our equity team members as well. And so that will be good. But the equity team would like that. Would like that. The other volunteer reach out we've had, if we wanted to include, is the Corvallis School Board Chair, Sammy, and I never get his last name right. Algebra, something like that. I'm sorry if I butchered it and somebody happens to be listening. That can bring some, possibly some insight from a board level from a neighbor, but we can decide that as we need more.
Do we want to look at a date, a date before next board meeting?
I don't know if that's gonna be really feasible.
I think if we want people to get school started, then it would probably be best to wait till after the next meeting. I
Well,
think-
that's why I was asking.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's good.
I would say, as Karen mentioned, let's not put it off too long, because I think this equity work is going to inform a lot of the other decisions that the board makes along with the path that maybe.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe within the first couple weeks, October.
Of course, they will be very busy with volleyball during that October time, but we can. Yeah.
I'll try to work around it.
Okay, city easement request. Now, is this, I see it's in the discussion portion of it, but are they wanting a vote on these?
Yeah,
or-
it should also, it's also down the city easement requests under action items. It's down at the bottom.
Oh, okay.
We gotta figure out how, Lillian and I are still playing with our agenda dynamics a little bit.
Okay.
Um, we have had these come forward in a number of different iterations, and we actually now have better pictures, which is nice. I reached out to Kevin Fear, who is the employee that is worked on putting together the proposals for us, with a couple of questions. And one of those questions had to do with the PES easements. And one of them that was an incredible amount of footage for an easement, that my question was, is this easement about a request to be able to take a look at the consideration of potentially moving, connecting Cedar to 16th? And that's why the request for that easement for PES. I have not heard back from him yet. And so my suggestion tonight is that we not approve the PES versions, simply because I don't have an answer. And what I don't want to do is to make a decision to cut right through that piece of property that's ours.
Yeah.
And give it away without full disclosure of the answer. The other piece that we've looked at is making sure that if there are future things we put on top of, a number of these easements are delayed. There's they just never got done when the systems were put in. And so we understand that if we were to put something on top of that and it had to be demolished to get access, that's our going. The thing that we have talked to them about is saying, if you have to tear up a corner of the track to get underneath that, it wasn't us that forgot the easement, that didn't get the easements. That bill needs to be yours. And so that was one of the reasons that we went back and asked for the rewrites of the contract statements to be able to be clear about whose responsibility was it to do what. And so with Joey and I looking at those, I feel very comfortable with the PHS easements and being able to set those up. They are existing, they are, what's the word I'm looking for? We're just kind of covering back for things that weren't done before. The requests for the amount of space are acceptable, so it's not like we're taking anything else on. The other thing the board could choose to do if you want to is, I tried to get Kevin to come tonight, and there was other commitments, but we could have Kevin or Chris Workman come and join us to be able to actually go through them. So those are really, the two suggestions I would have to make, and we can either approve PHS. I would hold off on PES until we know more about what the implications are for the size, or just hold them all off until we can get Kevin or Chris to come join us.
Would you see any reason to hold off on the PHS one?
I don't,
Okay,
but
I mean,
it's really up to what the group wants.
I haven't had time, just because I just got back yesterday, I haven't had time to look through all that stuff, but,
And a lot of these are backfilling for other things anyway, so if the choice was to wait to be able to take a look at what's there to ask, to get your questions ready, postponing for another month, it's not like we're delaying any work that they have to do.
oh,
That's what my question. Yeah,
that's what my concern.
yeah. They were just easements that as the lines went in, were never requested for who knows what reason.
Somebody just pulled it.
Yeah.
Okay, any more discussion on that? OSBA Annual Fall Conference.
William, do you have the dates there?
So it's, okay, November 11th to the 13th, and some of the keynote speakers are empowering the students today to succeed in an unpredictable tomorrow. Another one is cultivating a culture of love, liberation, and belonging. And then there's workshops around equity, state reopening, board leadership, community engagement, data-driven decisions. So you can either attend in person or you can attend virtually. So I will just need to know from each of you whether you plan on attending in one fashion or the other, and what that choice is and which sessions you want to do.
When do you need to know?
This is until November, so probably if I know by early October. As far as, I mean, if you're doing it virtually, it can be closer than that, but if you want to go in person and I need to make overnight accommodations, then probably a little bit earlier is better.
So this is Salem, isn't it?
It's in Salem,
Yeah.
yes, so you could, if you don't want to stay over, you could drive back and forth as well.
You want to set a date like the October 8th? It's a Friday, so that everybody has a day that they know that they have to get back to you by.
Sure.
I think for our new board members, I know when I came on, it was very helpful, obviously you have lots of other commitments, but if it's possible to attend summer or all, and I try to do the same. Each time you learn something new. There's plenty to learn.
Well, many times as I went up there, I still was learning stuff at the end of it. And probably one of the best things that I got out of it one year, they had the, and I don't know what they called it, but it was where we could do the board meetings online, you know, on electronically. And of all people, I'm the one that brought it back to the board and suggested that we do that. You know, because I didn't like carrying around them big binders that we
Right.
have.
Yeah.
You know, but it was just kind of weird that, you know, I would be the one to suggest something like that, but,
So you can teach an old dog.
well, sort of, you know. But yeah, I think that's one of the
Excellent, yeah.
the best thing that I got out of it. And I got a lot of good stuff out of all the other ones too. So I'm not saying that we didn't, but it's just, that was probably one of the most positive for this district, is not having to print all of the papers.
Right.
Oh, wow.
You know, I mean, sometimes it was a big notebook full of stuff, so. But you can see, I think there's 91 pages in this.
This is a small.
They would all have been. printed, so, yeah,
Excited when I saw 91.
but it's a good thing. There's a lot of positives, a lot of people to connect with that, you know, has good ideas and everything, so. But- Okay, action items, consent agenda. I assume everybody kind of looked at that, and do I hear a motion to approve?
I have a one correction. I don't know if we want to do that before or after.
What's that?
So on page 89, D3, it's in the minutes. I think, board member Daly is listed twice. I think I should probably be in there. Not that I necessarily need or want to be, but I just saw one little correction.
That explains why you did that. Because I never mind it, but it's fine.
No, you know, yeah, it was just as I was reading through there, I try to refresh the minutes and make sure that was only. So I'm happy to make a motion that we approve the consent agenda with that minor correction.
And I will second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 5-0. Co-op agreement with Alsea High School for softball, wrestling, and baseball.
We need a motion or?
Yeah,
I'm also happy to move that we approve the co-op agreement as presented in our packet.
I would also second.
okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
So I would just want to confirm that the LC students would be held to the same standards regarding social distancing or masking or any other COVID protocols. Because it does appear that perhaps our school districts are a little different in our approaches.
And I would also include the parents.
I would as well include that.
'Cause
I mean, again, my goal is to get kids involved in as many things as possible. I mean, I certainly want these kids to play on our teams. That's bottom line.
Yeah,
But if they're going to be on our team, like you're right, parents and then students abide by our
with our
guidelines.
students.
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Okay. I think that's a good point. So been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Like passes. Okay. Safe return and continuity of services plan.
That's the plan that I shared with you that we'll continue to update and come back with.
Yep.
That we will post on our website with the other information, and it's part of what we need to submit also to the state. As knowing that we thought about it, talked about it, had folks involved. The other piece of this that I'll mention, it's really outside this, is that Lynn and I and Ryan Kildare and I Len and I have had the conversations, Ryan and I will, are starting to get into what are those items of a memorandum of understanding that we need to carry over from COVID land last year, quite possibly into this year, and make sure that we can get those solidified and ironed out. So for instance, we had talked the other day, what about COVID leave? Well, there is no COVID leave, but we had language in one of our memorandums about what people would have to do to take their leave and an opportunity for, I'll call it a sick leave bank, for like, that people could donate sick leave. And so we would just come back around to that language and make sure that everybody knows that that's on the table. So we're having those conversations now. And the nice part is we're able to pull up a lot of our information from last year to replicate where we.
I did have one question. Now, you said that you would we would be revisiting this quarterly, right?
Yep, quarterly.
Do you anticipate any reason why we might need to do it more often than that? Or, like, for example, let's say the state dropped the mask mandate, numbers got better, whatever.
Then it would change.
Why
Yeah.
might we revisit it,
Yes.
like in the next month or whatever
Yes.
after that? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, we wanted to make sure we did it at least quarterly,
Okay.
but
But it could be more frequent.
are very open to more frequently to keep current.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Motion to approve that.
I would make a motion that we approve the safe return and continuity of services plan as presented in the holiday.
Okay, second that. Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? I think it's pretty well covered. That's good. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? 5-0, it passes. Okay. City easement request. Well, I think that when we talk about that, I'd be in favor of just tabling this one. And
Yeah, if there's no construction or anything that'll be done in the next
well, I
month.
don't think there's a big hurry to rush into it, and,
Sure.
we get a little more information on it.
Well, the nice part with these is what you have now is drawings and that really give you a good idea of where things are. And that was one of the hangups from before was,
Yeah, you couldn't tell what
no,
was that.
Joey and I would look at that and say, where's the map book?
So I think it's a good idea just to table that and then get some more information and then bring it back. But I'm especially concerned about that Cedar Street
Yeah,
easement.
yeah, we paid special attention to that and thought we don't want to get caught in that unaware.
No.
And also appreciate the language change if we feel comfortable with the fact that if we already have an existing structure or building that
Right.
it's not.
It's not on us, it's on them if they need to do some underground work.
Yeah.
Well, especially that track, I mean, you can't patch it.
Yeah.
And so, that's a huge expense that would be borne on us, but, yeah.
Well, the track or any buildings or
Oh,
anything,
yeah.
I mean, it's huge to do that. So, okay, with that being tabled, meeting closure, board reports and thanks.
I have a thanks. I would like to extend my thank you to all of the staff members at all of the schools for lit camp and other summer school programs. My youngest child has been participating in lit camp. And it has genuinely helped ease a lot of her nerves around returning to school. She did not go back to in-person classes last year. She stayed online all year. And so she was quite nervous about the idea of going back to school, not having any friends, not knowing any of the teachers, or maybe not remembering the teachers. So it was really amazing. She has read I can't even tell you how many books she's read in the last few weeks. We're on art projects, just coming home excited and exhausted and full of happiness. So I want to extend my thanks to all of the schools, and especially Ms. Rutledge for just being an amazing human being in general.
The other things that echo sketch there, but also the blueprint group that now is the continuity plan group that continues to work on this. I know, you know, we get to see the output, but I know it's a lot of work, so I just wanted to thank the members of that group, who put in a lot of time to get us to where we are.
I noticed on our consent agenda today that Lori Haslam had stepped down as one of the nurses for our district. And I just wanted to mention her here and have that on record of how grateful I think we all are, at least I am, I think people know that she stepped up in that role last year and really helped us through that tough time. And I really appreciate her help. And I know she's not actually leaving us, you know, kind of go hand in hand, but I did want to just acknowledge what a big help she has been during last year. Also want to wish everyone a great year going forward. Cross our fingers, everybody stays in school. We're very excited about the idea of actually having kids back and.
Absolutely, thank you.
Agree with everything that's been said so far, and I would also like to especially thank Susan and Lillian for the new board members and getting everything going for us. And
Fantastic, yeah.
I mean, it makes it very easy to transition onto the board when things are very well put together for us and easy to understand. And
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Second that for sure.
okay, does anybody have any agenda items that they would like to see on the next board meeting?
The one agenda item that I'd like to make sure we talk about is that new rule that was passed regarding public comment and online versus in person. I know it doesn't go into effect till January, but I think it'll be important for our community to know that there are changes that are passed by the legislature, not passed by the necessarily us, but will impact how public comment comes forward. And so even if it's just a quick, 15, 20-second beginning January 1st, this is the new thing that we present at each board meeting. I think that'll probably be a change than what we've seen, at least my time ever coming to a board meeting.
I think we probably want to do that at every board meeting.
Well, and also can it be posted online somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
But I just, if we're saying that the board,
No, that's
people know
good.
that's coming, and that beginning January, it'll be a little different.
Yeah, it's a
So,
little bit different.
Is there anything
So,
anything on our planning calendar that we really need to look at?
Sorry, what?
I said, is there anything on our planning calendar that we should make sure that we're putting on? I'm not sure Lillian and Susan look at that.
I think Division 22 is in there. I can't remember, it's
It is.
September or October.
October, I think.
Yeah.
So September is OSBA policy update, draft parent survey reviewed by the board, and draft student survey. The comment that says fall 2021 survey targeted for January, February of 2022.
I think that was when we were thinking about the community input for the change to semesters.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it looks like there's nothing really on here that we are gonna overlook right now.
Did you say Division 22? I'm sorry, on my form in front of me is October.
Yeah.
You can tell what I've got on my brain.
And I see in October, the work session with King Valley.
Yes. Which they have, by the way, Jamin told me this afternoon, he reported to me that they're right now at 202 students. So the 10 that we gave them in an increase, they're closer to last year than they are right now in terms of their numbers. So they're hoping to be able to add, but they're also running into some people that aren't quite sure what they want to do yet in terms of in person or on site. So they're sitting, I think their cap was at 207 originally. And so with them being right now at 202, they haven't added to the level that we had already.
Yeah, okay. Thanks.
Is there anything else?
Chairman Wells, the only other thing that I wanted to reference on here, and I will send you in for the schedule out, is we're talking about September 22nd as our back to school open house night. And we'll set up a schedule for staggered times with that. I raised that for two reasons, so that you know that it's out there, and we're looking like we've done in the past to do it on one evening. So we would start with the elementaries at like 4 o'clock and stagger through there. The other thing that we're being very attentive to is dependent upon where things are at, with lots of parents and children wanting to show their parents around their schools. That are we able to do that in person, and or will schools video and offer up and have some Zoom sessions to be able to offer to families. So we're really listening to the dynamics of the community and being able to gauge, not saying we're going all in person or all online, but kind of what in between the folds of that make good sense for the time.
Very reasonable. Okay. We want to move that we adjourn.
Make a motion that we adjourn, and I'll second that.
Okay. I'll agree with that. Meeting is
All
adjourned.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think you're supposed to have a motion to adjourn.
Might be right, but I, that's what it's all.